The man who wants to control all magic versus the man who is loved by mana. The clash between Yuno and Lucius has officially begun, and this fight will go down in history as one of the greatest battles ever in the world of Black Clover. That is, of course, until Asta returns to the Clover Kingdom to face off against the Big Bad, but until then, all eyes are on Yuno. And he's taking full advantage of the spotlight by showcasing his brand new spell, combining both his natural born star magic with the wind spirit magic from Bell to create the largest support spell we've ever seen, Neverland. A dome that seems to cover the entirety of the noble realm that both drastically boosts the power of his allies while greatly decreasing the strength of his enemies. I gotta say, looking at Neverland, it's almost like Yuno saw Real's Valhalla spell in the last arc and said that, I can do that, but better. Although, in all honesty, it is kind of a toss-up on which is the better support spell. Neverland covers a much wider range, but doesn't have the virtual immortality that Valhalla grants to those affected by it. But on the other hand, Valhalla doesn't weaken the opponents in its radius, and we can assume lasts for a much shorter period of time. All in all, both are actually incredibly useful support spells, and I guess it just kind of comes down to what kind of situation you find yourself in order to determine which one is the most useful. But regardless of which one is better, I think we can all agree that the idea of these two spells combining would make the user and their allies basically unbeatable. I mean, just think about it, with Netherland making enemies drastically weaker while Valhalla essentially negates any damage taken, all while both are drastically boosting the power of you and your allies. With those kind of buffs, even the weakest Magic Knights might be able to take out a few dozen angels by themselves. And speaking of weak Magic Knights, I love the fact that Tabata actually gave some screen time to both N and Soul in the chapter, having the two of them be the ones to essentially encourage their fellow Magic Knights to continue fighting even in a situation where all hope seems lost. Considering we also saw Jill for the first time in forever 2 chapters ago, it does seem like Tabata is actually making an effort to showcase his lesser seen characters in this final saga. And luckily enough for her, she's standing right next to Real, and if I was Real, I'd probably activate Valhalla as soon as possible because if he does, him and his squad are essentially going to be the most powerful force on the battlefield. Netherland is just the perfect support spell for Yuno, and something Tabata has been leading towards since all the way back when Bell was first introduced, and Bell, who I might add, was apparently based off of Tinkerbell from Peter Pan this entire time. And I can't believe I didn't put two and two together about that until now. I mean, Bell is literally her name. Not to mention Yuno's two magic types being wind and star magic, both things that are incredibly relevant to the story of Peter Pan. Like, I mean, it's all just right there, right in our faces, and it makes so much sense when you sit down and think about it. But putting aside the whole Peter Pan aspects to Yuno's character, because that's a whole video in itself, I find it incredibly interesting that both Asta and Yuno, after the Spade War, focused their power-ups on a single arm, with Asta focusing on increasing his own power, while Yuno focused on increasing the powers of others, showing, as Klaus says in this chapter, the qualities of a Wizard King. And that's probably what impressed me the most about this chapter, Yuno showing that he really could be the next Wizard King when all of this is over. I mean, don't get me wrong, Yuno's always had the potential to be someone whose strength would surpass any previous Wizard King the Clover Kingdom's ever seen. But a Wizard King has to be more than just the strongest wizard in the kingdom. They have to be a leader, someone whose mere presence would bring hope to those around them, even in the most dire situations, and who people would follow into battle without hesitation. Despite all the discrimination he received since the very beginning of the manga, with each arc, Asta has gradually turned hater into supporter, enemies into friends, and gained more and more followers who are willing to follow him into battle even against opponents they had no hope of defeating. And in this chapter, for the very first time, Yuno is showcasing those very same qualities. He is now truly on equal footing with Asta in the race to become the next Wizard King. But that race is going to have to be put on hold until they actually manage to stop Lucius, who in this chapter actually manages to catch Yuno in a chronostasis. But in one of the coldest panels we've ever seen from him, Yuno turns towards Lucius, showing that the spell doesn't affect him at all due to the power of Netherland. Because once that spell is activated, inside the dome, all time stops moving forward, meaning that the accelerated aging caused by Lucius's time magic is null and void. And as Lucius acknowledges Yuno as his true rival, Yuno activates his Spirit Dive Zephyr, cutting off one of his horns. Yuno has officially landed the first blow, and now we just have to sit and wait to see how this fight develops from here. But given that it's almost certain that Yuno has a fourth Spirit Dive that he is yet to reveal, things are most certainly looking in his favor. But I just can't help but feel that Lucius is hiding a sinister power that might even be able to push Yuno into a corner, possibly leading towards his downfall. That or doing something even scarier, turning Yuno into the most powerful paladin in his army. And if that dark future were to come to pass, only Asta would have the power to not only save the world, but also his best friend.